Can We Talk? The talk show where we will debate sports, entertainment, society, and statistics. To my right, I have the very lovely Danielle Gillum. To my left, I have Steve Taylor. And in front of me, I have Jerice Dean, who will be today's panelist. So, can we talk about, in today's society, in the work life versus personal life, should they coexist? We're going to look to Danielle Gillum to read or introduce us into our first topic.
Okay, so the Huffington Post had an article about people getting fired over Facebook. And just a little snippet from it, it says, Facebook's mission is to make the world a more open and connected place. But the site's users can sometimes be a bit too open, posting pictures, opinions, videos, and jokes via the social networking site that give employers pause and employees the boot. They took a look at 13 people who were actually fired over information posted on Facebook. Now, was getting fired a little too excessive, or did they earn it? That's what the article was about.
I'll chime in. My personal perspective on that is I don't agree with the firing of it, but I do think that there needs to be a distinction between, personal and work, so that you have balance in your life and things don't overlap and there's not drama leading from home into work and vice versa. So I definitely don't agree with the firing, because I think, we're in the first generation of, working through technology and balance and everything. So I think the firing was excessive, but the principle of the matter is you do need to keep work and home separate, and I do agree with that premise.
I definitely don't agree with firing someone either, because as a matter of fact, I just feel as though that boundaries definitely need to be set. I feel as though that you can go too far with social networks or, with bringing your personal life into your work life, but I kind of feel like it's inevitable to not have them coexist, at all. I feel as though you kind of, no matter what, you're going to have those two worlds come together in some capacity.
Now, as far as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and things like that, I believe that those social networks, they're public networks. So, Jerice, when you said boundaries, I disagree with that, because there are no boundaries online. Like, anybody can see what you're posting. It's out there. You put it out there for people to see. So, like, some of the people who actually got fired, because the one girl got fired because she was on Facebook and she called out of work. Now, although she said that she was on her phone in the bed from it, I feel like you need to be able to own up to what you did and the consequences. If that job felt like, if you were well enough to get on Facebook, you were well enough to come into work, then that's something that you have to take into consideration when you're on Facebook and you're supposed to be sick in bed.
Yeah, but that's what I mean by boundaries, because I feel as though the girl, she called out of work because she didn't feel good. If she's at a computer desk, because when we were reading the story, it basically you assume that she works at an office, in front of a computer. And like we were saying when we were just going over the story before we started shooting, there is a difference between being in front of a computer for 8, 9, 10 hours compared to going on and check your Facebook for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like that when I say boundaries, I mean what you put on. Like, just like you say, it's your choice. It's the person's choice on what they put on Facebook. That's the boundary being set. I mean, I just feel as though, if you put something obscene on your Facebook page and don't expect for your employer to look at it, especially if you know that, your employer is a high-end, type of company, that's absurd. But like I said, I feel as though the boundary definitely, it definitely is put on the person and what they choose to put on their page or whatever, Instagram or whatever the case is.
I definitely agree with that, Jerice. Like I was saying before, I think like we're the first generation where these type of issues really come up. So we need to set the standard more so than trying to make examples out of people, because I feel like the firing is trying to, subliminally sending a message to everybody like, you need to do this or you can't do that, or else it's going to cost you your job. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair either. But you need to, take a little bit of time to think before you post stuff, because when you do that, you're representing not only yourself, your family, you're also representing that company. So that company, it does have a standard, but I feel like it needs to be, there needs to be some type of negotiation where everybody understands their role and they can fulfill their role, and therefore, if you violate, then you suffer the consequences versus just being made an example out of.
That is true. That's a good point with being the first generation of that, though.
So then let me ask you guys this. At what point is it regulated in the sense of, should there be laws if you're an employee of a company and you have pictures on Facebook that show you drinking? Can you say, because I saw Danielle has a picture on Facebook drinking, as the employee, I'm going to fire you, or the employee, I'm sorry, I'm going to fire you?
I don't know about in that sense, but they do tell you in college and high school to monitor what you put on your Facebook, because employers do use that as a resource to see who you are. If you're on Facebook drinking and partying, all this, that, and the third, and they don't want that representing their company, they might not hire you based off of what you have on your social networks. So
do you think that there should be a set of rules already established before you enter a company that says, we don't want to see this, this, and that?
I mean, that might be beneficial, but at the end of the day, I feel like you are your brand, and those entities are a part of who you are. Like, I don't know why you would want to be represented smoking and drinking every day and partying this and the third. But if you are, and you need those guidelines, because I guess some people do, then okay, put guidelines out there.
See, I think those guidelines are subject to your lifestyle or what you were brought up into. We talked before, last week actually, about how some cultures introduce looking for marriage at 16. And we think that may not be right, but in other cultures that may be right. So, Jerice?
But what about those companies that, sit there and say, oh, well, there should be nothing at all put on your Facebook page? Like you're kind of trying to put out a message or saying basically like somebody has to be perfect in a way. Like and knowing good and well probably the CEO that created that rule probably does more, if not the same things that the employees are doing. You know what I mean? Like, I know me and my coworker were just talking about this lady that got fired for actually having a drink, but just because of the form of the cup, because it was in a form of a penis. So
is it too hard to put your stuff to private? Is that too difficult? Do
Well,
you
I
feel
think-
like that's...
Well, piggybacking off of last week also, I think that how much does technology rule our lives, Because nowadays people have to feel like I got to tag somebody in this on Facebook. I'm checking in to this restaurant versus just enjoying the evening and using Facebook as a tool. So I do think we need to, come to a conclusion of what the guidelines are.
But why do you feel like you have to check in
Well,
with
actually,
someone?
if we can cut this topic for a second, we actually have a gentleman, Steve Catania, who went to school at Norristown. And we're going to be looking to Steve to bring in our next segment. So